Okay, welcome, ladies and gents. Most of you already know the protocol, the procedure by now. You can ask all your questions via the Slido. The link is in the chat, so we will post it once more if you're for the late entries. We're very honored. We have an amazing protocol with amazing, inspiring speakers today. I'm very curious on their presentation skills as well. Look if they are as great as their building skills. But my estimation, the people that spoke with them are very inspired. So I hope that we will get the same output today. You probably know a bit about the protocol already, but who else can better tell this story than those that are building it? So Ganesh, you were starting, was my, okay. Well, then good luck, enjoy. You have a free pass to enlighten the next generation here. So the floor is yours and enjoy.
Thank you, Jordi. Excited to be here. So we are in what is known as a virtual roadshow mode right now with our upcoming public sale. And so every hour, it's like some part of the world, Japan, Australia, India, the Netherlands, America, Canada, and it's all from my living room here. So I think that's the beauty of Zoom. Okay, so let me get started. I'm Ganesh Swami. I'm one of the co-founders of Covalent. I'm a physicist by training. I worked in the pharmaceutical cancer research space for about half my career before pivoting to the big data space. One of the challenges with pharma is it takes about 5 years to build a minimum viable product, a prototype. And my friends and my peers were starting companies, getting funded, and even going through an acquisition in 18 months. And I kind of missed that rapid pace of innovation. So pivoted my career to the big data space. So for the last decade, I've been managing, building, and scaling big data systems. About 3 years ago, we found this opportunity that blockchains are very interesting, but for it to be adopted in an enterprise setting, it needs to speak to existing investments. And these investments can be the talent. You're not going to retrain people that you have. It's the processes. You're not going to change the processes. And it's the systems. You're not going to change the existing enterprise deployments. These enterprises usually have some COBOL system that's been kicking for the last 40 plus years, and it's not going away. Why try to fix something that's not broken? So that's the nature of enterprises. So what we found is there's this gap where blockchains are interesting, blockchains are novel, blockchains are important, but for it to be adopted, it has to speak to existing systems. And so we built this connector at a hackathon. So this is what we do as database hackers, right? You go to database hackathons on the weekend, and we built the initial prototype of Covalent. Of course, they didn't have a name back then. At a hackathon, ended up winning that hackathon and started a company around it. So that company is Covalent today. Covalent is from chemistry, covalent bonds, because we're binding the decentralized future with the present centralized systems. So it's a homage to chemistry. We also have some physics references. So if you look at the logo, they're orbitals. If you look at the homepage, including all that stuff with behind Harish, that's a Lorentz attractor, if you know dynamical systems in physics. So there's a lot of hidden gems in our branding, which makes it fun. So yeah, started the company. The other co-founder, Levi, is a database engineer. He built CouchDB at IBM. So we're both database hackers. Built the company. First 2.5 years, there's nothing going on in the space. It's probably the worst time to start a company in the crypto space, just as we were entering the bear market. No customers, no traction, no revenue, nothing. But yeah, we worked hard for about 2.5 years. We were just shipping code, refining the product, polishing the product, just doing that day after day after day, and we were working hard. And then summer of 2020, things dramatically changed. It was a pivotal moment in our firm's history. suddenly we found customers were demanding a lot from our product. Suddenly we found ourselves profitable. Suddenly we found that we couldn't keep up with the customer demand, and the opportunity is much bigger than what we had expected. So this is when we realized that this space that Covalent is the third breakout category in crypto. So the first being the trading venues like exchanges. Coinbase and Binance are examples of breakout categories, breakout companies in that category. The second being custodians. Because of legal or insurance or liability reasons, these institutions and enterprises are not going to self-custody these digital assets. So the market structure requires a custodian. So companies in that space can be BitGo and Anchorage. So these are multi-billion-dollar businesses that have broken out in that category. And the third layer are companies in the data space, companies like Covalent. So good examples there are Chain Analysis, raised hundreds of millions of dollars, very successful business. The Graph, which I believe was a presenter at a prior meetup. So they're a direct comparator to Covalent. And of course, Covalent is in that category. So once we realized that, then it made sense to go out and raise venture capital and scale the company. So we did a first round of financing last summer. And this was with the likes of 1KX, which is a European fund. They're from Germany. Mechanism Capital, which is Boston and Taiwan, and Woodstock from India, and then CoinGecko, some stellar investors. And then, we've gone through this scaling, building companies many times before. Both Levi and myself are serial entrepreneurs. So it was time to, roll up our sleeves and get busy. So since then, we've just been building the business itself. So the team has grown from 3 people to 30 people. So we're 30 people today. So all of this is in the last 7 months. The number of projects on Covalent has grown from 5 to over 100. The number of blockchains we've indexed has gone from just Ethereum to over 8 blockchains today. So we've scaled across all metrics. And then earlier this year, we found that there were still some gaps when it comes to taking our product and taking our token to market. So we did another strategic round to address these gaps with the likes of Coinbase and Binance. They're both investors in Covalent today. And Hashed, which is the biggest fund in South Korea, funded by the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and a couple of other market makers and market structure, like to address like OTC problems, market making. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts when you have to release a token. So exchanges, market makers, custodians, we have, and of course, I believe you guys also saw Emin. So Avalanche is an investor in Covalent. Near is an investor in Covalent. Terra is an investor in Covalent. So we also open up to these foundations. And so now what we have is the token is ready. The token, the public sale was announced last week. We're closing the sale, the registration for the sale in the next couple of days because it's overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of people have signed up and gone through KYC. Excited about joining the mission that we're on. The sale itself happens on the 29th of April. I think it'll go on for a couple of days. And then the network launch and then the token launch will happen in the next couple of weeks. I believe the network launch is slated before the sale. So that's the story, but let me talk about the product itself. And the product is a unified API. So the core problem we're solving is we're pulling out financial data from a blockchain in a format that's consumable by a reporting or a compliance analyst. So this could be balances, this could be positions, this could be historical granular transaction activity. And we provide a unified API. So what that means is that the same API can be used across multiple blockchains without with no fuss. All you have to do is change the chain ID. So this is very powerful because a reporting or a compliance engineer doesn't have to understand the nuances of a blockchain. They don't need to understand what gas is. They don't need to understand what hard forks or consensus algorithms or even download the blockchain. The Ethereum blockchain, the full archive Ethereum blockchain is terabytes of data. and regular people who are using Excel are not going to do that. So we found a lot of traction in all of these different categories. But yeah, that's the high level overview of Covalent. What the next couple of months, couple of years is going to look for us is now that we have a leading product, it's time for us to cement our leadership position in the market as well, which means on the enterprise side, we'll be buttoning up, going through all the compliance and regulatory affairs to make sure we're ready to sell into governments, ready to sell into bigger enterprises, and so on. The product itself is being matured rapidly as we speak. The number of blockchains is only going to grow, but we now have multiple go-to-market movements, which is what makes Covalent unique. So on the blockchain side, we have a hackathon called 1 Million Wallets, which we just concluded with Avalanche last week. So it's a package deal of taking the Covalent integration with a partner blockchain to market via a hackathon. We have the Dungeons and Data, which is our data competition. And then we have Alpha Alarm, which is our research desk, which is to push and investigate what's happening with on-chain data. And then we have the Alchemist program, which is our way to give back to the community. If you think about what Covalent does in this space, we basically take public data, refine it, and sell it back to you. There's not a lot of organic contribution that comes from Covalent. It's like taking seawater, refining it, and selling to a sailor, right? That's what we're doing. So with the Alchemist program, we're distributing 1% of the supply of Covalent, and this is a growth and leadership program which is investing in these alchemists. And you don't have to be technical. There are multiple avenues to participate, but because blockchain networks are participatory, this is a venue for them to participate. So Lei here, very humbled that she's been able to join the Alchemist program. She's an OG in the Alchemist program, so we have multiple tiers, and some of the Alpha Alarm stuff that came out over the last couple of days is all her contribution, and she's very generous in partaking on this session and sharing her experience with us. But yeah, that's basically high level what's going on with Covalent. I can talk, for hours and hours and hours, but go look at YouTube. I have spoken hours and hours and hours, everything from the technology to the business to, what makes Covalent work as a technology, as a market, as a product, as a team. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but I'm going to hand over the reins to Harish here, who I think can do a better job at explaining what exactly we do at Covalent.
Awesome. Thank you, Ganesh, for that intro. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Harish. I lead developer relations at Covalent, which is focused on the bottoms-up, ground up ecosystem development. So working with developers, running events and campaigns and hackathons, and getting opportunities like this to speak to all you fine folks. So what I'm going to do is actually walk you through a couple of our resources so you get a feel for how the API actually works, how it can be utilized in your projects, or if you're just doing some sort of analysis, how you can export that data and use common day tools like Excel or Tableau. We'll show you sort of that format, and then what Lei's going to do is actually walk you through the process of creating an interesting data visualization from the origins of our API. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I also shared links to two of the resources. One is just our generic doc site, and then the second is our actual API docs, and we'll walk through sort of both of those. So in terms of a starting point, the covalenthq.com/docs is your go-to point to get a feel for not only the organization, but also some of the training and support material that we have in the public domain. So we've got the information about how to sign up for your free API key, and this will be what you'll need first to be able to use the Covalent API. We talk a little bit about what we categorize as our proof of education campaigns, and Ganesh mentioned a couple of those, like 1 Million Wallets and Dungeons and Data. And again, the whole idea behind these is really to engage the community in sort of fun and interesting ways where We have them go through, quests or puzzles or activities, and all of them are designed so that you don't need to really utilize a lot of code. In fact, we've got some community events where it's effectively no code. So the idea is for this to be as inclusive as possible so that everyone can participate. 1 Million Wallets is focused around building wallet interfaces. And so we just wrapped this up with our partner Avalanche. And then Dungeons and Data is geared around more of a data science style of campaign where you're doing analysis, building out case studies, and leveraging our API to do some interesting deep dives and producing visualizations like the one that Leigh's going to show you in just a little bit here. We've got a learning series, so we've branded this as our Alchemist Cookbook. And what's exciting about this is that it allows you to sort of walk through a few really interesting sort of how-to guides and case studies in terms of how to use the API to do some interesting analysis. So we've got a couple here around analyzing tether issuances, for example, and sort of seeing the correlation of that with the price of Bitcoin. We've also got information around working with NFTs, which has been very popular in the almost the mainstream media these days. And we've got a few other case studies that are really interesting to go through. And all of this is designed as a starting point if you want to get more familiar with using our API. So this is just one more thing, just the supported network. So this is also a good resource. One of the unique things about the Covalent API, which Ganesh talked about, is the fact that with literally the change of one parameter called the chain ID, you're able to fetch balances, transactions, decoded log events across multiple networks relatively seamlessly. And so here's a list of all the networks that we support, as well as information about some of the upcoming networks that we're going to support in the near future. Okay, so that's just a high-level overview of our doc site here. And what I'm going to do now is head over to our API docs and sort of talk about the setup here, some of the interesting endpoints, and then we'll have Leigh do a deep dive on a couple of the endpoints themselves. So this is our API doc site. And in general, what we've done is we've classified, we've created sort of two classifications of our endpoints, what we call our class A and our class B. And the class A endpoints are those that are applicable across all the blockchain networks that were mentioned here, these here. So essentially being able to grab transactions, balances, decoded log events, all of that simply by changing a single parameter. And that's this categorization here of all the different API endpoints that we have, and we'll look at a couple of those. Class B are designed to be specific for a protocol. So as you can see under our list of Class B, we've got dedicated endpoints for some of the largest DeFi projects out there. So SushiSwap, Aave, Balancer, Uniswap, of course. And we started by building these out sort of mid last year when you really only had a handful of very large DeFi protocols. And so it was relatively easy to identify those and start building those custom endpoints. But now that the space has grown so much and there's so many different interesting DeFi projects out there, that for us to be able to go out and build these custom endpoints, it's just not scalable. And so one of the exciting innovations coming up is this tool called Primer, which will allow you to basically build custom endpoints, what we're branding as our Class C endpoints. And this will be for the community to build out these endpoints specific to their use case. And in doing so, they can effectively be rewarded as other people use those endpoints. So that's an exciting innovation that we're going to be launching shortly here. So we talked about Class A, we talked about Class B. One of the interesting things to note is we support many different quote currencies. So if you want to fetch pricing information, you can get that in a whole host of supported currencies. And the last thing in the intro here is the format. So standard API responses are typically in JSON format, if you're familiar with that terminology. We also have the option of exporting this data in CSV. So if you wanted to simply copy that information, move it into a spreadsheet or a BI tool that you're familiar with, you have that ability to do that. Okay, so let's look at a couple of these endpoints in action. So we had Class A, Class B. We do have sort of a third category here, pricing endpoints. These are designed for being able to fetch spot prices or historical prices for common tickers. So here's an example of us grabbing Aave token data in euros. And we can also specify a starting and an end date in terms of the date range that we want to get this. Directly from the browser, you can just simply hit try, and you will get the current information. We didn't specify a start or end date, so you just get the latest information for the Aave token in euros. And so again, if we wanted to get this data in CSV format, we just simply specify the format to be that, and we'll get this as a table. We've got a handy copy button here, which allows you to simply copy that data and then paste it into a spreadsheet or a BI tool. There's a few other interesting pricing endpoints, but I won't get into each one of those. They're fun to explore on their own. In terms of our Class A endpoints, so some of the most popular ones are grabbing all the token balances for an address. And this isn't actually something that's trivial to do. There's a couple of interesting blog posts that we posted around why this is an interesting technical challenge for us to sort of develop, because typically you'll have a token-centric view with respect to the data. So you've got a token contract, and then you can see the list of all the token holders associated with that contract address. What we've done is sort of map this so that we've got a wallet-centric view where you're able to then get all the tokens associated with that individual wallet. So it is a different perspective. We've got a whole host of different chain IDs. This is what was mentioned with our list of supported networks. So the Ethereum mainnet is with the chain ID of 1. And with the Ethereum mainnet, you can actually also just simply specify the Ethereum, leverage the Ethereum naming system. So you can actually pass in names like demo.eth, for example, and underneath, under the hood, those names automatically get resolved to their corresponding hexadecimal address here. So we can simply give that a try, and we can see the full list of tokens that this particular wallet has. We've got this flag for an NFT. So if you wanted to get more detailed information about the NFTs that are being held by a particular wallet, simply just set that to true. We return both ERC 721 and 1155 assets if you're familiar with those standards, and you get the detailed information regarding those specific NFTs for a wallet. We've got, very simply, the list of transactions, again, for a wallet address. So if I were to do demo.eth again, we can see all the detailed granular transactions that have taken place for this wallet in terms of all the transfers that have taken place. So this is also a very powerful endpoint because you get all this rich granular data with a single API call. And then if you wanted to get the same information across each of these supported networks, you just simply change the chain ID. For these other networks, you would actually have to specify the full address, the wallet address, since we won't be able to resolve it automatically, but you get the exact sort of same caliber and level of detail for the list of transactions from this endpoint. I'll let Lei talk about getting the historical portfolio value over time. That's going to be her demo. And we've got a few additional or specific endpoints around NFTs. So if you wanted to go to, for example, go to OpenSea, which is a very large marketplace, we can take a look at a collection like Axie Infinity. We can take a look at a particular, cute looking little Axie here. And the way the URL is structured as, this is the contract address for Axie Infinity, and then this is the token ID. And so what we can actually do is basically fetch all this data. We'll look at the external NFT metadata here. So this is on Ethereum. This is the NFT contract address that I pulled from OpenSea. And this is the token ID that I'm also going to grab from here. And we will then get all the information about this particular axis here. So if you wanted to create your own NFT dashboard or see, interesting bits around some of the characteristics and even the owner information, that's how simple it is to get all that rich data for a particular NFT. Let's quickly talk about Class B endpoints here. So Class B, again, are dedicated for specific protocols. And so if we take a look at the Get Sushi Swap network assets, again, just simply specify the chain ID that you want to find this data on. You could specify a list of tickers if you wanted to, but we're just going to grab all the network assets. So this gives you all the exchanges associated with Sushi Swap. So it'll give you all the token pairing. It will tell you, token 0 is wrapped Ether, token 1 is Tether. And so you get all that information along with things like the swap count, the volume, the fees, the quote rates, of course. And so in one API call, you get all the rich network assets. And what's even cooler is the fact that if I wanted to get all the Sushi Swap off of Phantom, for example, we just simply change that chain ID, and now we'll get all the exchange data for Sushi Swap on Phantom. And all I did was just simply change the chain ID. So these are really rich, detailed for specific protocols. And I would definitely encourage you to sort of check a few of these out if you wanted to do a comparison between for example, different DeFi protocols and compare what you might earn from Aave and PancakeSwap, SushiSwap. Very easy to do that type of analysis and build out that kind of dashboard by having access to these endpoints. Okay, I know that was a lot of information thrown in a relatively short amount of time, so we will definitely have time for questions at the end, but I wanted to now pass it over to Lei, and what she's going to do is a bit of a deeper dive on a couple of these endpoints and then actually show you the kind of visualization that you can create by using our API. Okay, over to you, Lei.
Hi. Good to be here today. As Ganesh and Harish mentioned, I'm one of the OG ambassadors in the Alchemist program at Covalent, which is really exciting. I've been here, I guess, like a little over a month. And I'm also one of the regular people that works at Excel. So it's good for me to kind of be a use case for people that might have different backgrounds that are a little bit less technical, and just show you how I can use the API and how I got involved with Alpha Alarm, which is that daily DeFi visualization Twitter page that we run. So I'll share my screen, but what I'm going to go through is basically token holders by block height, and then just show you how you can visualize the concentrations of different token holders and how you can see bubbles basically by balance, which can be really helpful if you're a little bit more of a visual person and you get tired of looking at numbers all the time. Tableau is a really useful tool to see all that. So I'll share this. So back in the docs, yeah, you already got an overview from Harish, but basically this is the endpoint that I've been interested in this week since we've been focusing on social tokens on the Alpha Alarm page. And if you check that out, you'll see that we do a lot of bubble charts, basically. Just as I mentioned, it's like an effective way to visualize. But so basically what I'm showing is the concentration of sushi tokens across Avalanche and Ethereum. So kind of using that like multi-chain functionality again, you can open it up in Etherscan, you go to the sushi token here, and then you do the same thing on the Avalanche Explorer, and that gives you both of those contract addresses, which is what we're going to use in the API. So I already put the Etherscan one in just because it's a lot more data, as you'll see. But so the chain ID is 1, and you copy and paste this address here, the contract address. And then I just do the block height as the latest. So for this specific endpoint, when you do the latest block height, it's just the current size of the chain. So if you're looking at data currently, then that's really useful. But if you wanted, and you had a specific event in mind historically, then you could find a corresponding block height to that historical date, and you could see what the token holders were like at that point. So you can examine growth that way, which is really useful if you have a little bit more time. And then I just usually put the page size as like 10,000 because that just allows you to get a lot more. And then I put it in CSV because I work in Excel. So that's gonna give you this output basically. So what you can see is like the decimals, the token, the contract address, which is what we pasted, logo, and then this is kind of what we're interested in. So these are the individual addresses. These are their balances. So what I've done is I'll just copy that using the copy button into an Excel spreadsheet. And then what I'm also going to do while we're here is I'm going to do this exact call, but for the sushi token on Avalanche. So slightly different. So I would change that to 43114, as it says here for Avalanche C chain. And then I would copy this address instead, which you can just click with that as well. But yeah, and then block height latest, and I'm just going to clear what I have, but do this, and it gives you the same output, but for all of the sushi token holders on Avalanche. So then I would copy that, and I'm just going to share my spreadsheet that I already copied it into. Here. So that's going to give you this, if you can all see my huge spreadsheet. And the good thing about this specific example is if you were to use one of the kind of more complex endpoints like get log events by topic hash, which is really useful, but you do have to do a little bit more cleaning of the data. But something that's just getting the token holders, for instance, it's a really good way to get an intro to the API because you don't actually have to really do anything with this in order to be able to work with it in Tableau, which is where we're going to go next. So I didn't even change any of these parameters. You can, and like you can adjust the balance by decimals, but all I did was just add the ticker or the chain name here, just so that I know for when I make a cute visual. And then what I would do is, where's my Tableau? There it is. So yeah, I bring that data into Tableau, which is how we make the alpha alarm visuals, most of them. We have a couple people using Power BI as well, but there's a lot of really useful tools that you can just import your Excel sheets directly into, and you can work really quickly that way. So once I imported it, I would just go to connections and add an Excel spreadsheet, which is what I'd done. And then it's going to show you the sheets that you have. I only have that one sheet because I just compiled everything and copied and pasted it right there. And yeah, you can see it's the same as your Excel, but it's just going to import everything really nicely. If you've never used Tableau before, it's really, really user-friendly. I would recommend you just play around with it because that is really the quickest way to learn. And it's basically like drag and drop. So once you have your data in here, you can go to the sheets. So I would click on sheet 1, and it's gonna load slowly. And I've already kind of imported it, but I'm just gonna show you exactly how I did all this. So, and I'll show you how I kind of make it look pretty so that we can put it out on Alpha Alarm as well. So basically all of that data that you had here is going to go into this side sheet, and you have your dimensions up here and you have your measures down here. And that's just like numbers and then whatever is in different formats. So in order to do like a really simple visualization of who are all of the different addresses and how much are they each holding, basically what I would do is first filter it by either the contract address, which is just whether or not it was on Avalanche versus Ethereum, so that we can isolate them and then we can compare them in a dashboard. So that different ticker column that I made that it basically just filters the contract address, but instead it's going to say just Avalanche or Ethereum so that it's easier for us to see. So I'm going to just do Avalanche first, put that in the filter. It's just going to give me one big observation. And then what I would go in to do is address and separate those by color. So it's going to tell me that I shouldn't do that, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's how I do everything. And yeah, I have it set to the rainbow color because it's my favorite one to work with, but this is just showing you this is all the token holders right here. These are all the observations. And if you hover over them, you can see their different addresses, which is really useful because you can go in and examine those further after. But then all I would do right now is just click balance here, which is showing the corresponding balance of how many tokens those people are holding, and just drag it into size. And then it's going to give me something like this. So basically, you can see this one's interesting because the vast majority of tokens are held in this one address, which is actually, I think, Pangolin liquidity, which makes sense because that's the decentralized exchange on Avalanche. But if I wanted to do that for Ethereum, I would do the same process, which is what I did, but just change this filter to Ethereum. And then I still have the address, the balance, and I dragged the label here too so that you can see the amount, which I can do on this one. So all I'm going to do is drag balance over to label. And then you can see it like that. And you can adjust that in your data source. If you want to get rid of the huge decimals, you can just go back here and you can go to balance and you could create a calculated field like this. And all you would need to do is just do this divided by, or both 18 decimals. So you would just do something like that. And then that just gives you the adjusted value. So if you wanted to, you could go back into your sheet and you could just make the adjusted decimal column be the label instead. But so what this allows you to do is you work in multiple sheets. You can drag these both into a dashboard like this. And if you do a little bit of the formatting, which we do for Alpha Alarm, which basically is like black background and pretty colors and everything, you can rearrange this. And I kind of had already done it because that part's a tiny bit tedious, but I'll share my other one because there. Oh, yeah. So basically you end up getting something like this, which is really cool because you could directly look side by side and see, oh, this is the concentration of sushi holders on Avalanche, for instance, and this is the concentration of sushi holders on Ethereum. And you can kind of like see the difference in a way that you wouldn't be able to if you're just hopping back and forth between the different block explorers, which can be like at a certain point your eyes glaze over. So yeah, it's a really cool thing to be able to use the API with pretty limited technical experience. I come from an international economics background and I didn't really do that much work with data before, but the more you just get comfortable with the really simple endpoints, you kind of like move on to more complicated things. And this is just really like a starting point visualization, which is cool because all this did was give me an overview and then give me something to look into. Like, okay, I'm definitely going to look into the Pangolin liquidity pool now. And when I hover over it and it gives me that tooltip, it tells me the adjusted decimal balance and then their address. So I could just copy that back into the block explorer and go from there and basically explore new questions, which is kind of like fitting because it's the motto is one unified API, 1 billion possibilities. But yeah, when you start to work with the data, that's really what it feels like. Yeah, and so what we did this week was basically look at a lot of different concentrations for social tokens in particular. And something that will be coming out if you check out Alpha Alarm is that there was the hack on Roll, which was really interesting, where a lot of social tokens were held, and most of those got sold into liquidity pools, and you can see big spikes in the token holders over time. So using the API or the endpoint that I just used, you could do that like on your laptop in 5 minutes. You could examine some of the implications of that hack, which is really cool to be able to see a news article and just directly kind of work on that yourself and be able to have that data in your hands. It's a really kind of unique and special thing. And yeah, I'm happy to kind of answer more questions about, I guess, what drew me to the Alchemist program. But I would say just overall, it's been like a really wonderful learning experience. It feels like a huge group project where everybody actually does their part, basically. And it's cool because blockchain is really a budding and cool industry, and it attracts a lot of people from different backgrounds. So I wouldn't have necessarily explored doing data visualizations if I had taken a different route, but being exposed to the people that are coming up with these cool ideas and then being able to really easily get involved and learn from them is super valuable. So I would hope that if you are interested in getting into this industry, you kind of look into programs like that as well, because I think they're super beneficial. I could speak from my experience, and it's pretty limited, and I'm already feeling that it's way worth it. And we have a season 3 coming out. So yeah, hope that was helpful.
Wow. I really especially enjoyed the link here with your background. A lot of our students are also from international business, so that connects quite well. I saw Harish post the type form in the chat. For those students that are interested, you can find more info in the chat. But I will definitely, we connected with Jackie and Niall, and we will upload all the necessary links in the curricula. So straight after this course, there will be a huge button like enroll or participate or whatever course of action can be done next. So thanks, guys. I'm processing a lot of information here. I expect loads of students have similar brain issues. Luckily, though, we have Slido, so that caught a lot of questions. So I'm going to shoot and fire them at random, and then feel free to pick them up who thinks has the best credentials to answer it. So let me start from top. I think the first one up was Diogo. Let me check, and then Malva can in the meantime unmute Diogo. And yeah, he's eventually the winner. Yeah, so first one up, Diogo, and I think he was like there were a multitude of questions.
Yes.
So he's one of our most active students. So I'm very much looking forward to these questions as well.
What he means is I'm one of the ones that spends the most, but yeah. So I got 3 questions basically. Is there a limit on how many APIs I can run?
The only limit we have right now is a concurrency limit. You can only make 20 requests concurrently at the same time, but there are no other limits on how many API calls you can consume in a day or in a month, in a year.
Okay, and can I like set this to automatically update? So she's using Tableau, and Tableau has a feature that you can automatically make new charts out of it. Can it be made that it all runs automatically?
Absolutely. So the only challenge there is the concurrency limit. So if you have 20 data sources, don't kick off all the 20 data sources at the same time, because you'll get blocked. So make them in batches of, I don't know, like 10 data sources. But if you have like 100 data sources, you have to make sure you control the number of concurrent requests that you make. That's the only limit.
I see. You mentioned something called primer. Can it also be used without coding skills?
So the primer is, it requires a bit of coding, but it's not too difficult. So it's modeled after the MongoDB query language. So the API responses that you see there, you have to filter and sort and paginate and aggregate, all of these standard operations, these transformations. You can do them in Excel, but Primer lets you do it on the API side. So it essentially lets you build a aggregation pipeline. So you can filter by a certain column, you can sort by a certain column, you can aggregate by another column, and then you have a final result. So it lets you build transformation pipelines, and you can build all of that into your CSV export. So for example, here, you only want to get token holders beyond, I don't know, like 1,000 tokens, right? You want to exclude everyone else. instead of downloading the entire data set and then filtering it in Excel or filtering it in Tableau, you can actually build those filters into Primer, and it runs on the API side.
Great. It's very nice. Yeah, the last question, it was already answered, which was if it worked with analysis tools like Tableau, but I've seen so. I was looking at YouTube for some videos on how to learn more about how to make it work, but I couldn't really find much. Do you have any link we can use for that, for actual like doing it?
For Primer or for Tableau?
Both, either.
So
no,
Primer,
not for Tableau, but for the first part.
Primer is not out yet, so we're just it's in private beta. So there's some documentation, but we haven't really ramped up the tutorials on Primer yet. But it's exactly MongoDB query language, which 5-10 million people already know. So that's what it is. With Tableau, we're going to be uploading this video. I mean, that's one of the reasons of recording this. We'll upload this video, but definitely look at Scale. So there's a video with Genia from Scale, S-K-A-L-E. That's another top sidechain for Ethereum. And she is a whiz when it comes to Tableau. She's been using Tableau for like 7 or 8 years. And she studied the entire network health of the Scale network using Tableau and Covalent's data sets.
I see. And more on how to actually use Covalent.
How to actually use Tableau rather than how to use Covalent. Yeah.
But I mean, like videos on how to actually use Covalent.
Yeah. I mean, so I'll answer that one there. So Yogo, we basically have that doc site, but now that we've finally just brought that out as its own repo, we're actually going to be ramping that up. So all the resources that you're talking about, we do have like YouTube channels with all these points you're making. We're actually just going to link them all from our doc site, so you'll have full access to it.
Okay. Yeah, that was
Wouldn't it be interesting, Yogo, that you picked for your next field assignment a challenge like this? Create someone for your own.
Yeah, perhaps.
Just a random ID, putting it out there.
We're actually trying you can actually build integrations into Tableau directly. So Tableau itself makes the API calls, so you don't have to go through the CSV export process and then load that into Tableau. That's actually something we're coming out with. If it's something you're interested in helping us out with, just let us know.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm not very good with the coding part still, but I'm interested in that.
We'll get you there. We'll get you there. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Yogo, I have to cut you off because I know you can chat for hours as well. Okay. So next one up was, let me check, an anonymous person. So I'm going to, with the same amount of votes, is one of our lecturers, which I think you've met before, is Gerard. Gerard has a question on his own with his beautiful green Dutch background. Those are, I don't know, I think they are called storks or something in English. Am I correct? Are they storks? No, never mind. Oh, you're muted. Sorry, Gerard.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I couldn't unmute myself, but now I can. Okay, well, thanks for all of your presentations. Very interesting. I had a couple of questions. One is, suppose there is some kind of unwanted information, like privacy related or illegal information or whatever, ends up on the blockchain. And would Covalent be able to shield that? And perhaps even when pressed by legislation to shield that?
Ooh, good question.
Good question.
Yeah.
The answer is no. That is a position that we take from a legal standpoint, because it is similar to the net neutrality laws that makes you a content hosting provider. So if you're streaming or provide a content delivery service for YouTube, you do not control what's on YouTube, right? You don't want to take on that responsibility. If you take on that responsibility, then people can send you a DMCA or another kind of net neutrality censorship request. So we're not in that position. We're like in the pipeline business. We don't care what goes into the data. And so the answer is we will never take that position.
Yeah, it would be awful to have to do that, but interesting answer. Another was slightly more technical. Can you do general SQL queries on the data?
Absolutely. So what is behind the API is a Postgres database. So you can literally, so every API call that you make is actually running SQL against the database. And so our research partners have direct SQL access to the Postgres database. This is like a 5-6 terabyte Postgres database, and you can directly run SQL against it. So yeah, we have about a dozen research partners that plug into the SQL layer because they want to ask questions that is not necessarily possible through the API. But the answer is, yeah, it's just SQL in the backend.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I was wondering how you prevent that queries overload the system, but I guess that's done by just only giving a couple of people access who are very well controlled and not everybody access.
Yeah, so we put, so the API has a concurrency limit. That's how we limit it, right? And then the API itself are tweaked for performance. So the whole pipeline, we own that, right? So the only thing you can change is the parameter into the SQL. The SQL itself has been optimized. So we control that on the consumption side. On the SQL side itself, we actually have a replica that we set up for our customers who want to run heavier queries. But those queries are BI queries. They're not API queries. And it's okay if those queries take half an hour to run. It's fine.
Okay, interesting perspective. And then my last question, can you also then make queries combining the data of multiple chains?
Yeah, so on the back end, what you have is just a schema for every network. That's all it is. So the schema itself is the same. So that's why it's a unified API. So in the API, when you check the chain ID, it just changes the schema name. That's all. So it's the exact same thing. So you can definitely do joins across chains, but I don't see why that would be necessary.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine some situations, but it's too much detail for now, I guess.
Okay.
But
yeah, I'm going to take it over here. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So we're almost at the end. Can I shoot one or two questions? Two final questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah,
for sure.
So this is a small one, but possibly with large implications. It's from Anonymous. Has there been interest from governments to use this for regulation and taxing cryptocurrencies, for example?
Oh, 100%. It's actually our first market where we became profitable. So yeah, so it's like the chain analysis, you know, it's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Then the second, also anonymous, is there, well, probably combined with your token launch next week, is there a plan to decentralize the current database?
Yeah, it's moved away from a plan to an actual launch. So the launch is happening in the next couple of days. It's not my story to share here, but we have been building a decentralized network over the last year. So this entire stack is now going to be hosted by a set of network validators, and they're all going to be earning the Covalent token for answering queries and for hosting the data. So that's the infrastructure that we're building. So yeah. So
and how would you compare it? How would you describe it? As you mentioned last week, we had the graph, for example. So they have a similar structure with all these subgraphs. Subgraphs. Thanks. So if you compare it, like the pluses and minuses of both systems, how would you compare these two?
So
are they even comparable?
Oh, they're completely different from an architecture and from a philosophy standpoint. They're completely different, right? So with Covalent, what we have done is we've made an exact replica of the underlying blockchain into a Postgres database. So every balance, every transaction, every log event, every position, everything is copied over to this Postgres database. And this is a 5-6 terabyte Postgres database. And we do this for all the supporting like half a dozen different blockchains. And then the API is where you do the transformation at query time. So from an ETL process, like we extract and load into a data store, and then we do the transformation. With the subgraph, what you do is that you build a transformation via the subgraph, which answers a specific question. And then you have a data source that you can query. So if you have to go back and ask another question, you have to go back and rewrite the subgraph. And this is you know, who has time to rewrite subgraphs? The other challenge is that once a subgraph has been rewritten, you have to re-index it. And for some of these bigger subgraphs, it takes a couple of days. So you actually have downtime until the new subgraph is ready. We don't have any of those problems with Covalent because the transformation is done at query time, the primer, that's the point of primer, right? So you get the data, you can either transform it in Tableau and Excel, create the pivot charts, or use primer. So everything is done at query time, which is a lot more flexible. From a database perspective or a decentralized database perspective, what they have decentralized is the consensus algorithm. They haven't actually decentralized the storage of the compute. So Covalent has taken a different approach. We have not outsourced the security of the network. We rely on Ethereum security. Instead, we're introducing IPFS in the middle. So we extract data from the blockchain, put it into IPFS. IPFS does the global replication. And then we build the Postgres indices, which are projections of the data on IPFS. So that is how we're building our network. So it's a completely different architecture.
Thanks. I think that will be recorded and integrated in the curriculum as well, and then compared with the answer that the graph gave about the same comparison. And then we will have to invite all of you once in a sort of a neutral academic debate. But definitely kudos for what you've been building, all of you, and especially the way that you grow this ecosystem and how you approach it. It's very interesting, especially the emphasis on education. Highly appreciated from our side of the fence. So one final question, and that's often the question: what do you want to ask the students, or do you want to give them any final remarks or comments, or say what's on your chest to the next generation?
I say get involved. I would say I think you have a different perspective out in Europe. You take privacy a lot more seriously, so you have a unique vantage point on what technology facilitates. So definitely avail of that home advantage that you guys have. I think the pendulum has swung far too much into for-profit corporations hoarding our data. And that's just not how the society needs to be built. So definitely lean into this new architecture of the internet. I think there's a lot going on here. It's like being part of the internet culture in 95 or 94. It's very, very early, but everyone, you don't have to be technical. You can be a politician, you can be an economist, you can be a computer scientist, you can be a mathematician, you can be a cryptographer. Doesn't matter. There's a role and there's a responsibility for every single person. So I think it's an exciting space. If you can get a chance to work in this space, definitely grab it.
And maybe just a quick point from my end regarding some of these community events. Like every project is clamoring for people to be working with their product or their project, and they're literally throwing free money at people to get them into their ecosystem. So there's so many opportunities. So if you aren't necessarily working for a blockchain or in the crypto space, there are so many opportunities to still get involved with these hackathons, community events, projects. Lots of great open source stuff out there.
Wow, thanks for this final remark, guys. This is exactly the message that I'm trying to get over as well. And a lot of our lecturers say the exact same thing in their final remarks. So it doesn't matter what kind of background the new infrastructure is being built. So join and find your own niche, your own ikigai, and become part of the paradigm shift. Okay, so I think that's a roundup. Once more, highly appreciated. I know you're very busy. I wish you all the luck next week. I do expect some mayhem in the communities and Twitters and whatsoever. So good luck with that. And then we will connect the communities, the content, etc. in the background. That will be done with Jackie and Niall. And truly awesome things are going to happen in my estimation next year. So I'm looking forward. We're going to keep a very, very close eye on you guys from an educational perspective. And let's build this bridge towards your protocol. Hopefully we can engage a lot of students in these events. So cool. Thanks, ladies and gents. Give them a warm, awkward digital applause, but from the bottom of all your hearts. So thanks, Ganesh, Harish. Thanks, Lei. and enjoy the day. You have many hours ahead of you. You're from Canada,
We're
right?
just getting started. Yeah, we're just getting
Cool.
started.
So good luck, and see you the next time, hopefully.
You bet. Anytime,
Cheers.
Jordy. Thank you.
Cool.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ciao.
Good luck.